Hello and welcome to this video. Generally speaking, Photoshop layers have always been the driving force for my own creative photography. Understanding the concept of layers, how layers work, is a good starting point if you're trying to learn them, and I'll link below to videos on that subject. Many years ago in my film days, it was considered very creative to place two colour slides into one mount, so they were projected together, creating what we referred to at the time as a derivative. Obviously, the success of that derivative was dependent on the two images we selected, and there was some trial and error involved in selecting the best two images. These days we call this creative photography, and Photoshop layers are generally a major part of this process, but a little trial and error is often still necessary. Now, one of the vital parts of this two-layered technique is having some good textured images. Here are just one or two of those that I've shot over the years. It can be anything: rusty metal, flaking paint, old wood, even stone. So my experience tells me that if I pick a textured image like this flaking rusty metal on the left, and I place it with a big bold subject, and I don't think we can get much bigger or bolder than this, they tend to work quite well. So these are raw images, so I'm going to open them both up into Adobe Camera Raw. Let's start with the texture. Now, whenever we blend two layers together, we're not entirely certain when we begin the process what effect this image is going to have on the train and vice versa. So what I tend to do is to just give a basic amount of editing in Camera Raw. But what I do like to do is to open my image as a smart object. That allows me to get access back into Camera Raw once I see the two layers together. We can turn the smart object on by going down to the hyperlink at the bottom center of the screen. And in the Workflow tab, this is the one we need. Just tick the box and it will open in Photoshop as a smart object, and it will remain like that until we return to this window and turn it off. Generally speaking, I use this for most of the time. So here I think as good a place to start as any is with the Auto button. I do want to make as much as I can of the textures here, so maybe I'll drop the exposure a little. I'll even push up the contrast. I'm okay with colour. I'm not sure yet what effect the colour is going to have. But the texture, yes, I'm going to take quite a large slug of that, make as much as I can of that. And maybe a bit of clarity, but now I'm going to open this up as a smart object into Photoshop. Now, with the image opened up into Photoshop, if we look at the bottom right corner of the thumbnail, we can see a little symbol. And that symbol is telling us that we're working here with a smart object. I'm going to return to Bridge and I'm going to open up the basic train picture. And I'm going to do much the same as I've done with this image, and I'm going to open that into Photoshop too. So now I've got both of my images opened on screen, and I can reveal them by just clicking the tabs at the top left. What I'd like to do is to place my texture over the top of my train. So I'm just going to drag that tab out, and I'm going to drag my thumbnail into the image. But now I can close that original thumbnail down. Remember, of course, that Camera Raw will remember all of the settings we've got here. And I need to position this squarely on the picture. But you'll notice I mentioned before that I didn't like that little line down the right hand side. So what I may do here is just drag that out a little bit and cover the entire screen. To do that, I'm going to go to my edit menu at the top left. I'm going to go down to Free Transform, Control T, and I'm going to hold the Shift key here because all I want to do is drag it this way If I don't hold the shift key, then the whole thing gets made larger. So I just want to hold that shift, just drag that out just to about there, hit the tick, and then we can proceed. What I'd like to do next is to blend this layer with the train using the blend modes just at the top left of the layers. The good thing about this palette is as we mouse over these, we get an instant preview. So the idea here is we go down all of these, and I can't tell you which one's going to work best. It really is a trial and error thing. But the good thing is they do give you an instant result. Overlay looks good. I like multiply. Overlay doesn't look too bad at all. In fact, when I first created this, I think I used multiply, but now I'm looking at this, it looks pretty good. Remember, I was creating this for a set subject competition called Aged, so I'm going to select overlay. If you've not done so already, save your layered stack here as a Photoshop file. That will retain both of those layers and also the smart object status. Now perhaps you can see why the smart object status is a good thing for this sort of work, because it's not until we see the two images blended together that we know where to go next. Now it's quite light at the top of the image, so what I could do here, I could darken either the texture image or the train image back in Adobe Camera Raw. I'm going to do that. I'm going to select my train, double click to open this back up into Camera Raw, and I'm going to go to my masks because I only want the top changed, and I'm going to go to a linear gradient. I'm going to drag that down somewhere like that, take down the highlights, take down the exposure. I may even drop the blacks and raise the whites, which will extend the contrast a bit. Final little tweak here. Take a little bit of the saturation off of that and click OK. And straight away we'll see the result. Now we've got the opportunity now to be creative by opening either or both of these up into Adobe Camera Raw and make the creative changes that appeal to you. Now whatever we choose to do with either the train layer or the texture layer is purely creative. I don't think anyone can tell you what's right or wrong. We're all going to choose something slightly different. We could put a layer mask alongside the textured layer to mask through stronger detail from the train below in isolated areas, maybe the copper pipework. But in this instance, I don't need a mask at all, and we're going to look at masks in a future video. So I'd be making sure at this stage that I've got this saved as a layered file, but what I'd like to do is to proceed with both of these layers flattened together. Now we can just flatten these two layers and proceed, but here's a little tip. If you hold the Alt key and you go to the top right of the layers and select Merge Visible, Photoshop will take those two layers and merge them into one. So we've got our layered file up our sleeve if we need it, but we've also got an amalgamated two layers into one here. But of course it would be a good idea to resave this as a Photoshop file, maybe giving it another name, Layers 1, Layers 2 as an example. From here I'd be doing any final little touches that I felt were necessary. I'm going to add a new blank layer above the image I'm working on. In fact, I'll turn those others off so you know they're out of commission for the moment. I'm going to pick up my healing brush from the toolbox, and at the top of the screen I'm going to make sure I've got the box ticked to sample all layers, because I'm going to do a bit of work on the highlights or the distractions in the image, but I don't want to commit those changes to my layer just yet. I want them to appear here. There's one at the top right which I'd like to paint over. There's a couple of little white marks here. I'm not entirely sure I know what they are, but they keep attracting my attention, so I'll deal with those. Over on the left hand side, there's one there right close to the edge, and these which I think I'm going to take out completely. As you can see, it's pretty quick and easy to do. Looking around the image, there's a bit of a highlight down here. Again, we're all going to choose something slightly different, but what I'm looking for is any of those little distractions which attract my eye. It's not a bad idea, if you can manage it, to save your image as a layered file and come back a couple of hours later, maybe even the next morning. I could decide, for example, to take out the 9F and just leave the big bold number, but of course those decisions are going to be creative. When we turn off the layer that we're working on, we can see all the repairs we've done. Never look very elegant when we see them like that, but when we place them on the image, they look pretty good. So at this stage, I'd be saving my layered stack, giving it a slightly different name, maybe layers 3, and then I can merge both of those layers together. With them both turned on, I can go to the top right and just choose Merge Visible, because what I'd like to do is just shade the outer edge. I'm going to keep this really simple to bring this to a close. Again, I'll put a new blank layer above that layer we're working on, and I'm going to pick up my freehand lasso tool, and I'm going to make a lasso shape around the edge. As you can see, it's quite an irregular one. Then go to my select menu and inverse it. Go to the select and mask and feather the edge. There's the feather. I want something quite broad, something like that. Click OK. And then I'm going to flood it with black. Black is my foreground colour in the bottom of the colour picker. Alt backspace will do that. Control D will remove my selection, and we can make a decision on whether we feel that that shading is working for us or not. And if it is, I could decide to save my layered stack once more and then flatten the whole thing to finish. One thing you'll notice with creative work is that it's very susceptible to our mood. If we create this image 5 times over 5 days, you're going to have 5 different results. I've hardly mentioned the colour of the image here, because we can choose it to be warmer, cooler, or maybe even a monochrome. There are so many possible variations on just these 2 particular layers that we could experiment for hours, but sometimes it's best to call a halt and move on to something new. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.